Hey, it's Eric.
And Lex.
And you're listening to the Cutting Room Floor podcast.
It's a weekly conversation devoted to diving deeper into the messages that were preached right here in our church on Sunday morning.
In an authentic space to Selah as we allow the Word of God to work into our everyday lives.
So hey, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Why don't you make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing about what's happening on the Cutting Room Floor podcast.
So let's lean in and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Cutting Room Floor podcast. We are so glad that you're back joining us on another episode. We can't wait to jump into all that God has for us today. We're going to have a great conversation on one of our favorite characters in all of the Bible named Joseph. If you know Joseph, he has an amazing story. It's a story of plot twists, ups and downs, and it really helping us to learn what it looks like to follow God through seasons of disappointment, discouragement, and also seasons of great blessing. Pray you enjoy it, and I'm ready to jump in. Are you ready?
Let's jump.
Let's do it. Let's jump. Both feet.
Right now,
Joseph.
Jumping.
How you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm here.
Yeah.
We're alive. You know, some days you have to choose joy.
Hey, talk to me about that.
Some days you got to choose joy. Some days you don't sleep. Some days you're tired and you're choosing joy anyway.
Yeah.
Here we are.
There you go.
I'm choosing joy today.
Wow.
How are you doing?
Hey, Joy's choosing me.
Wow.
Come on, somebody. I'm doing great. We had a rough night last night in our home. It's been a while since we've had a sleepless night, but
I think our daughter has ear infection.
That was last night.
Yeah. But here we are, though.
So
alive, breathing, breath in our lungs.
Talk to me about 2 a.m. Alexa.
You know, we got into it last night.
We didn't get into anything.
No.
You got into it. And it was great.
It was fine, yeah.
And then I responded by just like slamming doors and telling Oliver to go to bed.
And then we woke up in the morning and acted like nothing happened.
It was great.
But here we
didn't really slam doors. That's
no, we didn't slam doors, no.
But it was a rough go.
Yep.
But we're alive.
Yep, we're alive.
And I think as a young parent rather, this is for any young parent, I do think there's something about learning to choose joy.
Choose joy.
Listen, here's the thing.
In the chaos.
The things we've learned through being young parents.
Yep.
Number one, if you didn't sleep last night, guess what? Nobody cares.
Yep.
Nobody cares. Like, they all love you and they care, but they really don't care.
Nobody
Like,
cares.
it doesn't affect them. So you got to make a decision. Are you going to let it bother you?
Yep.
Are you going to get up? There's always reasons to be upset, annoyed, whatever. Overwhelmed. You got to choose
joy.
Choose joy. So we're choosing joy today.
It's almost like Paul knew a little bit about that.
Almost like he said, rejoice always.
And again, I say rejoice.
Yeah, that's a good word.
It's almost like that.
Yeah. So, hey, if you're listening today and you need to choose joy, choose it with us.
We
are right there with you.
Choose it with us.
And we came off a great Sunday. Honestly, one of my favorite Sundays in a long time in our church.
Such a good Sunday.
We called it Baptism Sunday. Had the chance to baptize a number of people and started this new collection on Joseph, talking about a discouraged dreamer.
It was so good.
This young guy who had a couple of dreams.
Yep.
God put some vision in his heart about what his future was going to look like and inspired him. I mean, he was pumped. But he also had some jealous brothers.
Yep.
He also was a bit ignorant, lacked wisdom on who to share what he shared with, and ended up in a pit, quite literally in a pit, and ultimately sold into slavery. So we came around just that whole idea of discouragement, of disappointment, of anger, confusion. God, where are you in a given area of my life? And kind of using that idea of a dream to really cover a lot. Like, what are the dreams in your life where you might feel discouraged? It may be a dream of what you want your marriage to look like, the intimacy you long for. Yeah. Maybe a dream for your children, a dream in your health, your body image, and the goals of your career, your endeavors, even the dream of your relationship with God.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people find themselves in discouragement in their relationship with God because they feel like God's distant, or they feel like it's dry, or they don't understand what the Bible's telling them, or they can just feel discouraged and wanting to quit, wanting to give up on what God's put in you. And really just felt like we needed to instill some hope into our hearts afresh to keep hanging on. And I really enjoyed preaching it. It was
so
a fun
good.
message to preach. Yeah, go ahead.
And you talked, I thought it was fantastic, and you talked about 2 points: to protect the dream that God's given you, and then to release your dream, to trust Him with the timing of it, to kind of learn to surrender your dream. And I think both of those points were so good, and they were really different and really practical for people, because I think that sometimes people are like anti-dreams in our community. They're like, well, God doesn't give us a dream. He doesn't want you to like be a dreamer.
Like, that's too worldly.
It's too worldly. Like, He doesn't care about your dreams. And I'm like, I actually think that throughout Scripture, and especially in the Old Testament with different characters where we look at their lives, he does give people dreams, and he gives people visions of what they're going to do and what he's called them and created them for. So I do think that is something God does for us as his children. He will show us what's to come. He'll put in our hearts a vision for what he has for our lives. And it's not selfish. And I think sometimes we have to go on a journey of making it not selfish, right? Like Joseph, like at first he was you made that point, like he was lording it over his brothers. Like, look, I'm going to be this great leader and you're going to bow down and you're going to serve me. And God took him on a journey of going from a selfish dreamer to somebody who's actually going to serve others. And it was about a nation. It wasn't just about a person. So anyways, I thought that's so good. So we protect our dream and we release our dream. I wondered if we could talk about the first point there about protecting the dream that God's given you. I know I have some stories. I know you probably do too. Maybe times where we in our life have shared our dream, our God dream, with the wrong people and walked away discouraged. I think that's important to talk about when it comes to the dreams in our hearts.
No, I think so too. And I think to Joseph's credit, it kind of goes both sides on this, understanding, I think, what's happening in the story. Like, obviously, Joseph's brothers were jerks. It was a very dysfunctional family. Joseph's father was not leading. He had they're technically half brothers. Jacob had multiple wives, and so the family dynamic here in the household, it was a mess. It was honestly a mess. And I think it does give hope to anybody who has what they feel like is a dysfunctional family.
That God can use
that
it
God
anyway.
actually can use anybody, and he can even use you in the midst of a home that you didn't grow up in that was strong. He can still put dreams in your heart. And Joseph's experience was, my dad is playing favorites. He's not giving guidance or direction to my family unit to keep us unified. He's allowing jealousy to run rampant. And obviously his brothers were crazy. I kind of made that point. Like, it's one thing in sibling rivalry for your siblings to pick on you or to not like you, to give you a noogie because, you're annoying. It's another thing for your siblings to want to kill you. And that's significant. And, to Joseph's credit, I don't even know if discouragement is the right word. Like, when someone's trying to kill me, I don't know if I'm
not discouraged.
I'm mildly discouraged.
I'm not a discouraged dreamer.
I'm distraught. Like, I'm a distraught dreamer. I'm disoriented. And so Joseph found himself in that place. But I think a part of what we talked about, it's a small point, but I think Joseph lacked some wisdom. And like you just said, he had this way of sharing these dreams he had with his brothers who he knew didn't like him. This wasn't a surprise. And yet he kind of arrogantly told them what a big deal he was, and shared that and was looking for their response. And obviously it made him quite upset. I think the practical wisdom for us is we just got to be wise about who we share our dreams with. It's a small thing, but Jesus dealt with this with Peter. He shared his dream of the cross, if you will, or the plan of God, the calling of God to be the Savior of the world. And Peter's response to him was not positive. Jesus, what did he do? He protected that calling. So I think in my life, I think in our life, I think this happens a lot.
I think it happens a lot.
I tend to be a personality who maybe doesn't struggle to dream. I'm always thinking about the future. I think that's an important thing for all of us to do, is to ask God, what do you have in my future? But I think when it comes to sharing those ideas, sharing what you see, I think I've had to learn kind of the hard way of, all right, God, sometimes I can't share this with a lot of people because I think when you do, you kind of walk yourself into discouragement if it's the person that doesn't see what you see, doesn't want to support you. I think in ministry that happens a lot, even little ideas we have for the church. I think sometimes I've learned to protect those ideas. I think a lot of us in church life, we can immediately go to the practical. Sometimes you bring a great idea of how you want to move your organization forward, and maybe coworkers, people can go right to the practical, how much it's going to cost or how much volunteers you would need, and the 10 reasons why something doesn't work rather than the one reason why, if God moved, it really could work. And so I've had to learn as a leader, if I sit in that lens, to go, all right, there are times I need to share vision and I need to push us forward no matter what. But then there's other times that I'm going to hold some of those ideas close to my heart. I'm going to be intentional to not share them too soon or with the wrong people. And I think the challenge for me is you don't just want an amen corner in your life. I think none of us want that. We don't want everybody just to tell us you're amazing if truly the dream of our heart is unrealistic. Or if it sucks. But I think you got to find people who love God, have his interest in mind, and love you, and people who will encourage you, but also speak truth to you. I think finding people is really important.
I remember I think that's true. I have this like distinct memory. It's a sad memory, but it's a distinct memory. When I was in high school and I felt like I had received a call to ministry. And I didn't know how to feel about that. I was excited about it. I was nervous about it. And I really just needed to like talk it through with somebody and kind of just share. And so I went to this person that I thought, okay, this is going to be a great person to talk with. And like, I can like bring this to them. And I think they're going to be excited. And I can picture the moment, when you just have like painful memories like that, you can like picture the moment. Like I can picture exactly where we were. And I kind of like took some courage. I was like, I just wanted to share like what God's doing in my life. Like I feel like he called me to ministry. Like I had this moment, and they like laughed in my face. Yeah. And they said, "Oh, so you think you're gonna be like Elisa Bevere?" Right. And I'm like, I never once said I thought I was gonna be Elisa Bevere. I don't want to be like. What are you talking about? Yeah. Like I don't have these lofty goals. Like all I'm sharing is like I sense this call to ministry and like this call to church and to preaching, but like now you've taken that and you've like misconstrued it to think that like I think I'm a big deal. Yeah. And I remember it being just like so painful for me. Yeah. Of like, wow, like is that what, like when you're not quite confident yet in some of those dreams or callings, you're like, is that what I think? Like, is my heart, like, maybe my heart's wrong? Like, and so it really threw me off course. Like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I didn't hear from God. Maybe this is just all, like, maybe I made this up. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I had to go on a journey with the Lord to really confirm, like, hey, like, they didn't call you.
That's right.
They didn't call you. Yeah. And I know that caused you pain, and I'm like, that's a bummer. Yeah. Like, I hear that. But maybe you brought it to somebody who couldn't see it yet. Yeah. But they don't get to decide what I'm going to do in your life. Right. I called you. Yeah. I created you. I have a purpose for you. Nobody else gets to decide that. Yep. And I think as a woman in ministry, you run into just a lot of people who disagree with the calling of God on your life. Yep. So you really do have to get comfortable, like, hey, I'm not looking for anybody else's approval or affirmation. Yep. And I do get really quite small with who I share my dreams with. Yep. Because I think that a lot of people, even if they have the right heart, and sometimes even if they love God, and sometimes even if they love you, they might not be able to see what you see. Yeah. And letting people off the hook to say, hey, that's okay. I'm going to learn from that. Yep. I'm going to apply wisdom and not let the pain of rejection keep me from moving forward and trusting God. Yeah. But I'm also going to learn from it and maybe think twice before I pour my heart out before somebody, right? God, Jesus talks about not casting your pearls before swine, right? Did I get that right? Yep. And I think there's something to that. I'm not saying that you should be able to talk with loving community about what God's doing in your life, but I think there has to be some wisdom to who that is.
No, I think it's huge. And I think sometimes we can underestimate the enemy of discouragement. Yeah. And I think there's a degree the Bible talks about guarding your heart with all diligence. Yes. And I know if there's one seed I don't want to get into my heart when it comes to going after the plan of God for my life is the seed of discouragement. Right. And so I have a responsibility. And I think what you're sharing, like I could even hear it now as you tell that story. Like there was a moment where you were looking for courage, right, affirmation and approval, and you didn't get it because it was with the wrong person, someone who couldn't see what you see. And that moment, those words, they were so short in your lifespan. Yeah. Yet, I mean, we've talked about this many times, but they put in a seed of discouragement in your spirit that even now it brings up those same emotions of what you felt over a decade ago when those words were spoken. And so I think, it's horrible and it's sorry and that sucks. And I think it teaches us, all right, there's wisdom here. Like, God, I can't always I can't always get myself out of discouragement. No. People are going to say what they say.
Yeah, and people are going to think what they think.
And so I'm not going to live on their praise or their disapproval, but I am going to steward the dream. And I think when it comes to that mindset, like, God, this dream in my heart is a seed. Yes. It's something that needs to be protected. Yeah. And so I'm going to guard and protect and steward it. And then I think I'm with you. I think sometimes there's this journey we go on. I think God wants to take us on as our Heavenly Father of, I think when we're younger and we have maybe a lack of maturity, we find ourselves in more need of affirmation from others, of approval from others. I think the journey God wants to take us on is, hey, as you mature, I don't want you to need that so much.
No.
It's not that he's anti-community.
Nope.
Or any of that, but I think there's something of, hey, I'm your source of courage.
Yep.
And if everybody in the world disagrees with you, but you have a word from me, then you can trust me.
That's enough.
I'm with you. Like, one word from God is enough.
That's enough.
And I think there's something to that in our maturation process where we want a mom or dad, or we want a friend or a family member or a pastor or a mentor to affirm us. And I think God will create opportunity for that.
Yeah.
But I also think we've got to come to a place to say, God, if you've called me, if you've put it in me, I trust that at your timing, you'll bring it to pass.
Right.
And I think that can be really hard.
I think so too.
Especially for the big dreams of our life.
Mm-hmm.
But
that
even,
sense of calling and purpose. Yeah. No, and I think then on the other side, which you talked about a little bit on Sunday, is that what that experience, and that's one of actually a few. It's not just like that one. I had multiple of those moments, just with different environments I grew up in, and so that's one of a few. But what that has done for me is, like, what it has created in me, which I think this is God turning it for good, is that I just decided I will never do that to somebody.
That's right. Yeah.
I will never do that to somebody. You come and you share your dreams with me. You share what you think God's speaking to you with me.
Yep.
And what you're going to find is encouragement, is affirmation. Hey, I see that in you. I see that you're so gifted. Yep. I'm so curious to see how God's going to work that out in your life. Is it always how they think it is? Absolutely not.
Yep.
I've had so many high school girls come to me. I feel called to ministry. I'm like, you know what? God, I trust that God's big enough to work that dream out in their life.
That's right.
So I don't need to be the one to tell them all the steps that they need to take and what they're going to face and how hard it's going to be. And maybe you're actually not. You're actually just in this moment, and you're actually going to be a mom, or you're going to be in business. Like, like, there's so many things I could say.
Yeah.
But what I've decided to say is, you know what, hon, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you sense you want to serve God. I love that you have a heart for his house. I'm so excited to see how he's going to work that out in your life. You just have to keep trusting him. Just keep surrendering, keep trusting him day by day, season by season. It's not all going to happen at once, and we just trust him. Yeah. But I see that. I see your heart in that. Yeah. I'm so excited for what God's going to do in your life. And I think that's important, to be people that speak courage in people's lives.
100%. No, I think it's so important. I think of, like, Barnabas. Like, he was known as the son of encouragement.
100%.
And he came alongside Paul before Paul ever really launched into all the ministry he had. And I always wondered, God, why do you, like, if Paul didn't have Barnabas, would Paul have become Paul?
Maybe not.
And maybe not. And I think there's something to this idea of encouragement. We live in a world that's so critical.
So critical.
Our American culture, we cut each other down. We love to point out the ways things aren't going to work. Look for the flaws. We are cancel culture oriented. We have doubt about anybody.
We're so insecure.
Anybody who starts to succeed, we think, well, there's probably something going on there.
Yeah.
There's probably an affair happening.
Yeah.
There's probably...
It'll all come out one day.
It will all break down one day. Like, we are raised in this environment of competition, of measuring ourselves with each other. I think sometimes the reason that people struggle to be encouraging to someone else is our own insecurities, the own places we feel like, oh, we don't measure up, or we don't know our own identity. And so I think learning to say, God, that's not going to be me. Like, I'm going to champion people. I'm going to encourage people. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to somebody. If I see, hey, yeah, dude, there might be an issue here, and if you have ears to hear it or asking me, then I'll be honest. But I agree with you. I think there's something about learning from the text to be encouraged like Joseph to protect your dreams, and to maybe be challenged by the brothers of how you steward someone else's dream. And sometimes I learned this in Bible school. I talk about this, I feel like, to you a lot. Me and you talk about this, but when it comes to when you're in these conversations about someone's dreams, is to be careful to not answer questions they're not asking.
I think that's really smart. Yeah.
Like, I think we do this a lot, actually, in life, in marriage,
in church,
with our children, in pastoring people. We do. I've learned a long time ago, if you're not going to ask me, I'm not going to share. Yeah. Because you don't have a heart that's open to receive it. Yep. And so I'm not going to cast my pearls before swine. I'm not going to give you something, maybe it's wisdom that honestly you'll never receive anyway. And I remember this Bible school instructor talking about so many stories of trying to help and get in there. And here's what I've learned. If you don't ask me, I'm not going to share. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to speak life into you and encouraging you, because I don't know your story.
I don't know your story.
I don't know what God's speaking to you, but you're going to find encouragement. If you rub shoulders with me, you're not going to leave more down.
Absolutely.
My prayer is you leave better. You leave up. You leave bigger. I think if we all lived that way, man, we'd feel a lot more confident going into what God has 100%. For us.
And I think the last piece of wisdom before moving on to the next point is if you are looking for somebody, you're like, no, I do have a vision of how I want to be a mom, or how we want our marriage to be, or I have a business in my heart, or a ministry I want to launch, or I want to be a pastor, right? Whatever that is for you. If you are looking like, no, I need to go to somebody, I want to share with somebody, I need wisdom, go to somebody who's done it.
Yeah, right.
Don't go to somebody who's going to misunderstand you. You're going to feel worse than you came before to them. You need to go with somebody who's done it before.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're, we have a few women on our team that are like, I'm feeling a call to pastoral ministry. Don't necessarily go to your mom about it.
Right.
Go to a pastor who is a woman about it, who has sensed that and discerned that and walked that journey. Because what you will hear is, yeah, that's awesome, you can do it. Yeah, you're going to face some challenges, but you can do it. Yeah, I can, some people might disagree with you, but you can do it. Like, don't go to somebody who doesn't believe in women in ministry looking for encouragement. So if you're a mom and you have a vision of how you want to raise your kids, I want to homeschool, or I want to work and do motherhood, like whatever your vision is for how you want to be in motherhood, go to a mom that's done that.
That's right.
Because they are going to see you, they're going to affirm you, and they're going to say, hey, it is possible. Here's what I've done. And they'll probably come alongside you. But if you go to somebody who's never done it before, how are they going to help you do the journey? You need to find somebody who's done it before.
I think that's great. No, I think that's, well, my only tag to that is I think it's true for leadership too.
Yeah.
I think as a pastor, everyone has an opinion about how church should run.
Yeah.
How your music should sound, what ministries you should have,
what song you should sing, what message you should preach on.
Well, what topics you should or shouldn't. You should be way stronger talking about sin, or you should talk about politics, or here's all the things in my opinion of what you should do. Here's the deal. If you haven't done it, I know we have a lot of our church folk that listen to this podcast. I mean this with all grace. If you haven't done it, if you haven't pastored, all those opinions go in one ear and out the other. They don't resonate or stick with me. You know who I listen to? Pastors.
Other pastors.
Who've done it, who've led staffs and recruited volunteers and launched new campuses and are steps ahead. We go to them for counsel of how to pastor. I think it's a bit of wisdom. Maybe you're a business leader and there's a friend of yours that just doesn't see it. They don't know how to launch a business and how to take a risk and how to take their finance and put it out on the table to see if you can grow the company.
Don't be discouraged by that.
Don't listen to people who've never done it. Who would be scared to do that. Go listen to other business leaders who've done it.
Get some courage.
That will put courage in you. I think it's a load of wisdom. I think many people get delayed in life by discouragement.
I think so too.
Many people, they never step out into things because of discouragement. In fact, I'm looking at one of my friends just over here, Harry, old buddy, old pal, who has had so many opportunities to listen to someone tell him all the reasons he can't 100%, do.
He's a great example.
What he's created to do, to create movies, yet he's learned to trust God, trust his instincts, and to listen to those who've done it. To put courage in them to do it. I think it's a great tool in life. Very practical, will help you.
And then I want to talk about your next point, because I think this is key to seeing God's work in our lives come to pass, and that's releasing your dreams. That's the journey of surrender. Like what you talked about, which I think is so important, is that God gave Joseph this dream that he was going to be leading a nation, and he gave it to him. Joseph didn't make it up.
That's right.
It was from God. But then Joseph, and I don't know how many years it was in that time period. I don't know if you remember. I don't know off the top of my head.
I think,
But that wasn't like next day Joseph was living out that dream. I mean, it was a whole journey with a lot of drama and a lot of ups and downs. And Joseph found himself, so he was wrongly sold into slavery. Then he was imprisoned. Then he was forgotten about. Then eventually he made his way to interpret these dreams for Pharaoh. We're going to get into this as we talk about this collection more. And, Joseph went on a journey of what I would say dying to himself. And probably dying to the dream that God put in him. Lord, you showed me this vision. There's I can imagine Joseph just sitting in prison. We just gloss over it. I can imagine him. There's no way that that's ever going to happen. Was I just an idiot? Did I just make that up? Was I just, maybe I was just seeing things, right? There's absolutely no way that that's ever going to come to pass. That's okay. I mean, here I am. But I can also see him saying, well, here I am, God. You can use me. You can have your way. And I think that the dreams in our lives and even the calling in our lives, the things God's purposed for, they tend, from what I've noticed, they tend to take a similar journey. We are in this moment, and we're given this vision, this dream from God, and it is from Him, and we receive it, and then some years pass by and some things happen, and we kind of get into this own personal place, like prison, of like, wow, God, I thought it was going to look one way and it doesn't look that way, and I feel like you've left me, and I feel like maybe you're just not even faithful. You get into these narratives about God. But if we don't stick it out with him, we'll never see him bring it to pass. But that could take a decade. That could take 2 decades in our lives. And I think that's the journey of faith. It's faith and patience that we inherit the promises of God. And so I think that takes releasing, surrendering our dreams to God, to his timing, to his purposes, to his ways. But in that process of our dreams being surrendered, in a sense, our dreams dying, what it does is it actually purifies us. It actually sanctifies our dreams, that they're no longer about us, but they're about his kingdom. They're about him. They're about other people. You mentioned like Joseph saw grandeur, but God saw service.
That's right.
Joseph thought about himself, but God was thinking of a nation. And there's journey that we have to go on. And that looks like releasing our dream.
I think that's huge. And I find it so fascinating, like the dream that Joseph describes in Genesis 37 versus really what actually happens in his life. They really do look different. Joseph's dream, it was, basically him as a tall piece of wheat standing in front of smaller pieces of wheat. That was it. He was a leader. He had influence. He was, leading over his household. But that was so far from what actually God was going to do. And I think this happens in our life. I think when it comes to the dreams God gives us, he puts seeds of what it may be like, but he does not give us all the details. And he takes us then on a journey of actually bringing that dream to pass. God didn't tell Joseph, you're going to be second in command in a distant land called Egypt. God didn't tell Joseph, I'm going to use you to strategize around saving a nation from a famine. And that your brothers will be starving and come to you needing help. And you'll be there to provide not just for them, but for, everybody in your land. God didn't show him all of that. And I think if he did, Joseph either would have been confused. He would have not wanted that. He wouldn't have known how to even get there. God put the seed of the dream and then took Joseph on a process of bringing him to that dream to pass, and also then making that dream about God's plans and not Joseph's. And I think this is massive. And I think this is a journey I went on in my own life. I think we do this regularly, but I know with ministry, I know when I was younger, when I was in 7th grade, I felt for the first time in my life at a summer camp, I had what I felt like was a call to ministry. I don't know how to describe that any more detailed than that, because that was about all the detail I got from God. I got a call for ministry. 1 Timothy 4:12 through 16 was a scripture that came alive to me. It helped me to realize, okay, God, I feel like one of the things you've purposed in my life is to serve in your church, to be in ministry, to give my whole life to the proclamation of the gospel. And cool, all right, here we go. Let's do that. And then you start going on a journey of, God, what does that look like? And, graduating, getting into college. And that dream began to get more clear to me. Okay, maybe it looks like pastoring. I kind of got clear on that. But I think as a young person, dreaming about being in a ministry, dreaming about pastoring, so much of that dream for me, if I reflect on those years, was all about me. I would sit in church dreaming of the way that I could be up on stage sharing, great thoughts and having the applause of a crowd and having affirmation. I would look across the aisle of social media, and I would see all these pastors that I admired,
it was like the rise of celebrity pastor
with
culture,
huge followings on social media, and taking photos with celebrities and traveling the globe, preaching at conferences and churches, and I dreamed of the way I could feel so good about myself. If I could have that opportunity, if I could be in those private rooms, if I could know those people, and the whole dream, all of it, it's centered on me. And so God was taking me on
God's dream for you.
Still God's dream.
That he gave you, not necessarily all those details, but to be in ministry.
And still where God was going to, was where God had my future. But I had probably a decade, and I could have been more. Decade's probably a little short. A decade of a journey God had to take me on, of dying to that dream, of dying to celebrity, of dying to pastorship being about me. Like how much is that missing the purpose of what the Bible teaches us of the role and office of a pastor? And if I can just be transparent, when I was 14 and got that dream, when I was 18 and it was reaffirmed, man, the dream was of God.
The dream was of God.
But the dream was about me.
Yeah.
And so God had to go take me on a journey of, Eric, this isn't a dream of grandeur. It's a dream of service.
100%.
Eric, this isn't a dream all about you. It's about others.
Yep.
It's about serving in my kingdom. It's about being a part of a bigger plan.
Yep.
And I think in an American culture, in a westernized culture, where the dream is so worshipped.
Yeah. So idolized.
People love the dream. It's the American dream. It's the influencer dream. It's the, you name the dream.
The trad wife dream.
Yeah, as those who follow Jesus.
Yep.
I think we've got to learn
Yes.
to reorient our dreams to God's way.
Absolutely.
And I remember this season of my life, and you can jump in, but I remember this season, like before we had stepped into becoming pastors and all of that. I had this opportunity, we had this opportunity before us that we thought was going to look like us finally stepping into the calling of God. And it was like, it was this grandeur moment, like all of it was finally coming to pass. And we had put all our eggs in this basket, and we were ready for it all to happen, and it was going to be amazing. But right when we thought it was all going to happen, all of it suddenly crumbled. Yeah. All of the opportunities suddenly fell away, and we found ourselves as a young married couple, pregnant, with no future in ministry, no opportunity. All of this that we had spent years of our lives getting ready for, in a matter of moments, we saw it melt away. And I was working in a different job elsewhere in our community, and just felt so far from every little dream that was in my heart and life. And I feel like it was in that space, for the first time, I realized, all right, God, I'm finally going to release this. I've been holding on to it for years, waiting for this to happen, trying to force it to happen. God, it's never going to happen. So you know what? It's yours. And if I'm never in ministry, that's okay. If I never pastor, that's okay. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to trust you. And it was quite a long time in that space of hands open, where finally, like the Bible talks about, a seed goes into the ground and it needs to die. Right. And then it can produce fruit. It was in the dying of the dream, and I think a more comfortable word is the releasing of the dream, where then God, I think, was able to edge off some of the selfishness, able to put his heart, into me, so that when the opportunity did roll around later for us to, okay, God, maybe you're bringing this back, that we were ready for it. Yeah. Our hearts were right for it. And I don't think that means we're perfect. No. You got to guard that, I think, always. But I would encourage anybody listening that you feel like maybe you're in the dying, you're in the phase of, wow, I really thought my life was going to look one way. I really thought I was going to marry this person. I really thought I was going to have kids by now. I really thought that I was going to get that promotion. I really thought by this age I would finally be in the house I want to be in, or I'd finally be walking in the ministry God had called me to.
I really thought we'd have 3 kids by now.
Whatever. You name it, whatever your really thought is, and you're discouraged. You feel like there's this metaphorical dying taking place. I want to encourage you, there is life on the other side of the release. Yeah. When you can finally just say, God, it's yours. Your job in my life isn't for you to accomplish my dreams. My joy in life is to partner with your dreams. So I release it all to you. I trust that you're going to take everything you have for me and you'll bring it to pass in your timing. Yeah. I'm going to live in peace. Yeah. There's great life in that position, and you'll be surprised what God will do with it.
There is. No, I think that's beautiful. And I remember, I think what I learned in that season for us is that God is more committed to his plans for our lives than often we can even be. Right. That when we enter into times of discouragement, we are often so quick to throw in the towel. Yeah. And we just, and it's good for us sometimes to just get to that place on your knees, full surrender. But what I've found is that God does not quit on us. That's right. And that we might sometimes quit, but when our heart is still surrendered to God, he does not quit on us. Yeah. And he actually is so committed to his plan for your life, for my life, for people who are listening's lives, that he is going to make it happen. Yeah. He is going to pave a way when we have a surrendered heart. Yeah. I think about your parents when they first launched a church and it utterly failed. Yeah. And they said, we will never be in ministry again. It went into the ground and the soil and it died. That dream did. But God was so committed to their future and to the church that he saw. He said, no, we're going to resurrect this. And I just think that can bring me comfort. I hope that can bring you listening comfort today. You might be in a season where you've thrown it all away. You're like, God, I don't know. I thought you had this for me, and obviously you don't.
Yeah.
And I trust you. I surrender to you. I want to encourage you. God is going to make a way.
Yeah.
And he can do it. He's strong enough to do that, right? Like we learned, God is strong enough to hold my future.
That's great.
He is capable enough to get me to where I need to be. He can move any mountain. He can change any dynamic. He can work in anybody's heart. He is able.
Yeah.
He's able, and he cares, and he's committed. And what he has for you, it'll come to pass.
That's great.
It will. It might take some time.
Yeah.
And it might be a little bit painful, but it will. Just like Joseph, God was committed to Joseph's dream. He was committed because there were people on the other side. He was committed because, in a sense, he needed Joseph to be raised up and to be a leader to save people from famine. He was committed to it. Even when the chef, the baker, forgot about him, even when people did him wrong, God was committed to his dream. He was committed to bringing it to pass. So for us, we can rest in that, that when we surrender, when we live like Joseph, and I think he did surrender. I think he lived a life of surrender. He went on that journey. We can trust that God will be faithful to bring what he's given us, that dream he's given us, to bring it to completion.
Great. God's more committed to your future
than you are.
I think you can have some peace in that, no matter where you find yourself on the journey. I love it. Love you. That was fun.
Love you.
Appreciate you. You're the best.
You're the best.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Cutting Room Floor Podcast. Hope you are encouraged no matter where you are in your season of life with dreams. Keep hanging on to God. He's got you. We'll see you next time right here in the Cutting Room Floor Podcast. God bless.